Now let's take a look at some lighting and rendering topics in ZBrush. So once you've got your models here, and I'm just going to use a variation of the character that we created as kind of our example. As we move around the canvas, we get a view that looks like this. But you remember, we could only preview, or we could only view the fiber mesh if we did a render. And again, the render is going to be activated using this BPR button. That stands for Best Preview Render. So we do have a render palette that we can change options here. Let's take a look though at the lighting first of all. So we'll go into the light, and you can see there's a preview sphere, and one light is active. You can see the intensity here. We can increase the intensity, and you can see that get a little bit brighter. We can also move the light around, so if we wanted to come more from the left-hand side, we could do that. So we could set this up maybe as like our key light. And we can give it, if we wanted to give it like a color, we could give it a little bit of a yellow color, something like that, kind of a warmer color. If we want to add a new light, all we have to do is click on another light icon here, and then we can kind of move that into position. We can kind of, if we want to give this another kind of color, and we can also change the intensity. So right now it's set fairly low, but we can move it around on our scene here. And we do have light properties, and so we can turn on, if we wanted to turn on shadows in there, we could do that as well. We also have the light type. Right now it's a sun, which is kind of a directional light, and so these are set to sun, but you can change the light type in there. You can also change work with the shadows and things like that. So to see the render, all we have to do is hit this BPR button. So it's going to go through and compute the render, giving you a preview or a progress bar up at the top. And then you'll be able to see the rendered view. So this is what the render looks like. So we've got a very strong light coming from the left. We've got a very low light coming from the side. And also if we wanted to come in here and increase that maybe a little bit more, bring that over kind of to the side, we can modify that a little bit. Now we also can change some material attributes. So in our material, we've got this skin shade. We can turn on this wax modifier, and this will allow us to get sort of a fake subsurface. We'll say OK to that. That just means that we have to turn this on in our render. So we'll go up to render, and let's go into our render properties. And I'm going to turn on wax preview. And you can see on those, like, look at the ears, you'll be able to see the difference here. You can kind of see that there. So if we do another render, we'll let that go through and calculate. And then as soon as you render, if you go back and rotate around, you'll need to re-render again. Okay, and that's under render properties. Okay, you can turn on your shadows, you can turn all these different things that you want to include in your render, you can activate those. We also have the ability to render passes. You can work with the shadows, the ambient occlusion specifically. So there's a lot that you can do in calculating, sort of figuring out how you want your render to look. We also, again, have the ability to blend materials. If we have multiple materials on an object, we can blend those. If we're working with a micro mesh, which we didn't have time to talk about, but I'll let you kind of replace polygons with individual meshes. You can come in and use that. So if we do a render here, let's come in and create a render. So we'll create a render. And let's say we want to adjust our render. We can use BPR filters to do some adjustment. So if we come into render, come down to filters, what we can do is within this filter, I'll activate the filter. And right now it's a noise filter, so it's adding noise. Let's say I don't want to do that. I want to actually go in and colorize this. So right now the blend mode is set to replace. So if we wanted to replace that with a red, we could do that. Now right now it's kind of replacing the whole thing, but we can mask, modulate this based on the mask or the Fresnel. Okay, so if we increase this mask, the red is only going to affect the model. Okay, and then we can set this to have it only affect either the areas that are pointing towards us, like that, or the areas that are along the edges. You can kind of see the difference there. Okay, you could also drive it based on your ambient occlusion or your shadows. So this just lets you do some post adjustments based on different aspects of your model. Now we can also use Keyshot to render. To do that, we'll simply go into Render. In our external renderer, we'll choose Keyshot. Now when I hit VPR, it's going to open up Keyshot. That opens up Keyshot and brings our model in, and you can see it rendering there. You can add materials within Keyshot and work with it from there. And this is the Keyshot bridge. So if you need more information about loading that in with ZBrush, this is with ZBrush 4R7. Look at the Pixelogic site and they'll have more information on that. But you can set that external renderer as Keyshot, and that'll let you go in and then create some, have a little bit more control over your renders here in Keyshot versus in ZBrush. So make sure to take advantage of that if you're interested. The next thing that we'll take a look at is outputting images and movies and turntables and things like that. So we'll talk about some output topics in the next lesson.